September 18, 1944. In the misty fields of Lorraine, France, a desperate German counterattack unfolds. General Hasso von Manteuffel, a seasoned commander, hardened by the Eastern Front, unleashes 58 brand-new Panther tanks, Hitler's latest armored marvels against General George Patton's overextended Third Army. These Panthers, fresh from the factories, boast impenetrable sloped armor and long-range guns that can shred American Shermans from a mile away. Manteuffel calculates victory, surprise, superior firepower, and a swift strike to slice Patton's flank. But in the fog of war, an unforeseen American trap awaits, blending mobility, artillery precision, and industrial might. What begins as a promising offensive spirals into one of the greatest tank disasters of WW2. Watch as elite panzers vanish in flames, revealing why Germany's technological edge crumbled against Yankee ingenuity. Stay tuned. This forgotten clash exposes the true killer on the battlefield. Not tanks, but systems. September 18, 1944. General Hasso von Manteuffel stood in his command post near the German border, gazing at a map that, for the first time in months, whispered victory. At 51 years old, Manteuffel was no blind zealot. He was a cold calculator of war, forged in the frozen hell of Russia and the sands of North Africa. He had witnessed armies evaporate under relentless pressure. The Wehrmacht was hemorrhaging on dual fronts, but this morning, he clutched a royal flush. Under his orders, the 113th Panzer Brigade, Hitler's emergency fire brigade, not the ragged survivors of Normandy, patched with hope and duct tape. These were pristine units, tanks so fresh the paint gleamed, crews still memorizing dials. Equipped with 58 gleaming Panther tanks, the apex predators of the Western Front, Manteuffel crunched the numbers with surgical precision. The American M for Sherman, a dependable mule, but a medium tank with a stubby 75mm gun. Its front plate, Swiss cheese to a Panther's 75mm KWK-42 from 2,000 meters. The Panther's angled armor deflected shots like rain on a windshield. Its cannon could eviscerate a Sherman from ranges where the Yank gun fizzled. He reviewed fuel logs. 600,000 liters allocated, sufficient for 2 days of fury. 2 days, that's all he required. The plan was poetry in motion. Thrust into the vulnerable right flank of Patton's Third Army. Patton was strung out. Supply lines taut over 400 kilometers. Tanks dispersed across 180 kilometers of front. Manteufel's Panthers would converge like a fist, hammer the U.S. 4th Armored Division, sever Patton's vanguard, dismantle it piecemeal, spark a panic forcing the Allies to freeze their onslaught. By every textbook metric, success was inevitable. German tanks reigned supreme. Concentration of force was flawless. Surprise. Ironclad. The Americans were clueless about this Panther swarm coalescing in Lorraine's fog-shrouded woods. Yet Manteuffel operated on 1940 blitzkrieg axioms in a 1944 apocalypse. He viewed tank duels through lenses of steel thickness and barrel length. Unbeknownst to him, his brigade marched into a vortex woven from 3 alien elements to the German psyche. At 0730 hours on September 19th, the 113th's vanguard rumbled toward assembly points. A dense fog blanketed the Lorraine plains, thick as pea soup. Visibility plummeted to 50 yards, then 30. Commanders strained through periscopes. Drivers tailed exhaust plumes blindly. Manteufel's ESTA, Panther's long-range sniper, cannon dissolved. A 2,000-meter kill demands vision. These cats saw zilch beyond 50 meters. The fire brigade was neutered, groping in the murk. Meanwhile, in the American Combat Command, AHQ, 15 kilometers distant, Colonel Bruce C. Clark absorbed scout reports. Heavy engine growls. Massed formations advancing west. Clark lacked heavies. His spearhead was the 37th Tank Battalion under LTKL, Quayton Abrams, future namesake of America's Iron Fist. Abrams didn't flinch. The fog, a great leveler, a German catastrophe. Without horizon shots, Panther guns were moot. This devolved into a back-alley brawl. Reaction speed trumped all. The German columns snaked through the haze. Engines thundering, tracks grinding. Officers perched in cupolas, anticipating a rout of U.S. outposts. Instead, the lead Panther detonated in fire. Its turret rocketed skyward. Then the second, the third. Panic surged through German ranks. Radios erupted in chaos. Turrets whipped wildly, hunting phantom flashes in the gloom. No joy. Flank shots pierced thin side armor. Rounds that bounced off fronts now gutting internals. Voices crackled desperately. Enemy left. No. Right. Where? Hatches popped for desperate peeks. Machine guns scythed exposed heads. Germans presumed a fortress of Yankee heavies. Reality, far deadlier. They'd blundered into a hornet's nest. Entered the M18 Hellcat tank destroyer, a German punchline. Paper-thin armor, penetrable by heavy MG fire. Open turret, exposing crews to shards and frags. By Wehrmacht Creed armor, Überelset was a death trap, but Manteuffel overlooked one metric: power-to-weight ratio. At 17 tons, propelled by a 350 HP radial aircraft engine, the Hellcat screamed at 55 miles per hour faster than any tank alive. No Panther, Tiger, or T-34 matched it. It repositioned quicker than a turret swivel. In Arracourt's fog, speed became apocalypse. Panthers lumbered in rigid phalanxes, like Teutonic knights in lockstep. Flanks mutually guarded, but tactics demand sight. And comes. Fog nuked both. Hellcats prowled as lone wolves, radio-sensed packs. Pattern repeated ad nauseum that morn. A 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion platoon eavesdropped. Panther rumbles via radio-plotted maps. Commander barked. Flank M. Engine howled. Hellcat dashed a hedgerow or barn ambush. Crew poised. Gunner finger twitch ready. Loader stacking AP rounds. Waited till Panthers lumbered past. Sides bared. Boom 3. 76mm hypervelocity slugs slammed home. Panther turret slewed futilely. Hellcat already reversing at warp. Commander bellowing vectors. Relocated 300 yards of field before Germans acquired. Clash of doctrines. Germans forged fortresses to absorb punishment. Yanks built ghost. Shoot scoot. Vanish. By noon, fog thinned. Manteuffel, digesting reports of halted thrusts and escalating casualties, bark, press on. Yanks can't blanket everywhere breach their veil. As sun-pierced mist, the trap's second jaw snapped. In opening salvos, Panzer Grenadiers elite infantry clung to tank holes or trailed in half tracks, shielding armor from close assaults. Abruptly, skies over Arracourt ripped asunder. Not bombers yet. Something surgical, beyond German grasp. American artillery. The 66th Armored Field Artillery Battalion under Clark's thumb, unleashing time on target, standard for 4th AD, but a horror show. Old-school barrages fired sequentially. Battery illused, foes ducked on whistle. Surprise evaporated. Lethality plunged 90%. Tot math magic. Fire direction center. Computed shell flight times from scattered batteries, varied distances, elevations, back-calculated fire times for synchronized impacts. Battery A, at 12 kilometers fired at 1200, B, at 4 kilometers at 1205, C, at 8 kilometers at 1210. Precision ballistics ensured all shells converged simultaneously. When fog lifted September 19th, Piper Cub spotters buzzing gnats overhead eyed Panther columns. Radioed grids became artillery's unblinking gaze. No warning shots. One tick, Grenadiers trudged mud. Next, airburst apocalypse, dozens detonated 30 feet up. Shrapnel hailed like blades. Blasts pulverized. Grenadiers shredded. Dozens slain outright. More maimed. Panthers unscratched, but stripped bare. Radios fried. Antennas twisted. Links severed. Command vaporized. Tanks buttoned blind, isolated in bedlam. Sans infantry screens, ripe for bazookas. Sans lookouts, flanked unseen. Sans comes, awareness nil. Manteuffels' pride wasn't battling, it was being disassembled. By afternoon, September 19th, Arracourt smoked with gutted Panthers, but the gut punch stat. Not just combat kills the halts. The 111th Panzer Brigade, slated to bolster 113th, arrived tardy. Why? Fuel famine en route. Germany engineered history's pinnacle tank. Zeiss optics unmatched. Interleaved wheels. Sloped plates. Velocity cannon. But couldn't gas 58 beasts 20 kilometers. Patton railed about shortages. Red Ball Express strained. Yet American dearth. Tanks idled. Trucks refueled. Hours later, German, abandoned, breach, dynamited, engine sabotaged, charges set, left rotting. Over 3 days, farce ensued. Yank recovery teams hauled Shermans to field shops mid-fight, mechs welded holes, swapped mills, bent barrels straight. Morning code tanks rejoined by dusk. Germans, no toes if tracks slipped, ditched, trans failed, ditched, fire, bail, and burn. No spares. Pipeline, 113th, entered with 58 Panthers. 24 hours, 30 gone. 48 hours, 50. Week's end. 8 functional USCCA, lost 5 Shermans, 3 TDs. Day 1, weekly, approximately 25 total, but replaced in day's strength by a transatlantic lifeline. English ports to Midwest factories, Pennsylvania ores, Texas refineries, Manteuffel forged hammers. His forge starved under Hitler. Yank's mobile forge at 50 miles per hour. September 22nd. Manteuffel ordered retreat. The vaunted riposte fizzled. Tally brutal. 113th TH's 58 pristine Panthers. German logs. 8 operable. Brigade ghosted CCA. Approximately 25 losses. Replenished swiftly. Ratio. Execution. Arracourt not proved uber weapons. Like Panthers futile. If blinded, infantry bare, fuel-starved, outflanked by nimble swarms with seamless curd and logistics. Germans built armored paladins. Americans, radioed factory on wheels, trucks, spares, ammo, gas. In Lorraine's September fog, factory prevailed. Manteuffel survived, penned memoirs conceding us taught artillery, and TD agility, obsoleted Panzer doctrine. Arracourt lurks in D-Days. Bulge's shadows, lacks epic scale, but it's key to Germany's doom. Not massive, but revelatory. Not bravery both sides braved, Germans no less valiant. Triumph of system, logistics, comes. Industry where, velocity, modularity, parts outshone solo prowess. The battlefield of Arracourt became a graveyard of steel ambitions. Smoke pillars rose where Panthers once prowled, their massive holes now cracked open like eggshells. Ammunition cooking off in secondary blasts that lit the dusk. Crews who bailed out stumbled through mud, some dragging wounded comrades, others simply running until exhaustion dropped them. Manteuffel, receiving fragmented reports at his forward HQ, felt the first cold grip of realization. This was not a setback. It was disintegration. His brigade, the one Hitler had personally prioritized with fresh production, straight from the assembly lines, was being erased faster than it could maneuver. The Americans were not fighting fair. They were not lining up for honorable duels of gun versus armor. They were dismantling the very concept of the Panzer attack. The Hellcats kept coming. Wave after wave of hit-and-run strikes, each one perfectly timed with the lifting fog patches. A Panther commander would spot movement, traverse his turret with agonizing slowness, fire once into empty air, and then feel the hammer blows on his flank, as another M18 vanished behind a tree line. German radio nets, once crisp, with disciplined calls, dissolved into a cacophony of pleas and contradictory sightings. Feindlich Panzer links. One voice screamed, 9 Retzi, sind überall. Another contradicted. No one could form a coherent picture. The brigade's cohesion, built on years of doctrine that demanded tight formations and mutual support, shattered under conditions it was never designed to face. And then the skies spoke again. The Piper Cubs droned overhead like angry hornets, invisible to the blinded tankers below. Each spotter plane carried an artillery officer in the back seat, map spread across his knees, radio microphone hot. They watched the German columns bunch up in confusion, perfect targets now that the fog was burning off. Coordinates flowed back to the fire direction centers. Batteries miles apart received their individual firing times. Shells arced through the air from different angles, different altitudes, different distances, and they all arrived together, again and again. The ground trembled with synchronized thunder. Airbursts flayed the Panzer Grenadiers, who had dismounted to try and screen their tanks. Fuses set for 30 feet altitude turned open fields into killing zones of razor steel. Men who had survived Stalingrad and Kursk were cut down in seconds by weapons they could neither see nor counter. Without their infantry shield, The Panthers became sitting ducks for every American weapon within reach. Bazooka teams crept forward through ditches and hedgerows, waiting for a tank to button up after another artillery stunner. A rocket whooshed out, struck the rear grille, where armor was thinnest, and turned the engine compartment into an inferno. Crews bailed out into machine gun fire that had been waiting patiently. Some Panthers tried to reverse out of the kill zones, only to throw a track on the churned mud or hit a forgotten mine from earlier fighting. Immobilized, they became magnets for every Hellcat in the sector. One by one, the pride of German industry burned. By nightfall on the 19th, the scale of the disaster was undeniable. Over 30 Panthers were confirmed destroyed or abandoned in the first day alone. Supporting units reported dozens more immobilized by mechanical failure under the strain of constant maneuvering and poor visibility, or simply out of fuel after desperate attempts to regroup. The 111th Panzer Brigade, meant to deliver the second punch, never even reached the battlefield in strength. Its columns stalled along narrow roads. Tanks pushed aside when they ran dry. Crews ordered to scuttle their machines rather than let them fall intact into American hands. Demolition charges echoed through the night, as brand new Panthers were gutted by their own crews. Manteuffel paced his command trailer, maps littered with red arrows that no longer meant anything. He had started the day believing he held the initiative. Now he was reacting, always one step behind an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every move. Reports trickled in of American recovery vehicles already on the field under cover of darkness, towing damaged Shermans and Hellcats back to field workshops. He knew the Americans had that capability. He had read intelligence summaries, but seeing it in action was different. A Sherman hit multiple times could be patched, re-engined, and returned to combat within hours. A Panther that threw a track, or suffered transmission damage, was almost always a total loss under these conditions. There were no recovery vehicles in sufficient numbers, no spare final drives waiting in depots, no endless stream of replacement parts rolling forward on trucks. The second day dawned, with scattered fog lingering in low ground. Manteuffel ordered a renewed push, concentrating what remained of his force for one concentrated thrust. He still had faith in the Panthers' individual superiority. If he could just achieve local breakthrough, mass his remaining tanks, force the Americans into a stand-up fight on open ground, the technical edge would tell. But the Americans refused to play that game. Hellcats continued their swarming tactics, now supplemented by Shermans of the 37th Tank Battalion under Abrams himself. Abrams positioned his companies on reverse slopes and ridge lines, using the terrain the way a matador uses a cape, inviting the charge, then punishing it from prepared positions. Abrams' Shermans would fire a few rounds from hold-down positions, then reverse down the slope, before return fire could range in. The 76mm guns on the later Shermans were no match for Panther frontal armor at distance. But in this broken terrain, distance was a luxury the Germans no longer had. Shots came from 500 meters, 300 meters, sometimes closer ranges, where even the standard 75mm could find weak spots if it hit tracks or vision ports first. Every time a Panther crested a rise to pursue, it exposed its belly, or lower glacis, to waiting Hellcats on the flanks. The pattern repeated itself across the rolling fields of Lorraine. Advance, lose tanks, fall back, lose more tanks trying to recover the first losses. German crews began to hesitate. Veteran commanders who had charged T-34 swarms on the Eastern Front now found themselves second-guessing every order. The fog might have lifted, but a different kind of blindness had settled in uncertainty. They could hear the high-pitched whine of Hellcat engines revving away after each strike, but they could rarely see the enemy long enough to reply effectively. Ammunition expenditure skyrocketed as Panthers fired at shadows and distant tree lines. Fuel gauges dropped faster than planned. Every kilometer gained cost, more than any pre-battle estimate had allowed for. On the American side, the mood was almost casual. Abrams moved between his companies in a jeep, radio handset in one hand, cigar in the other, calmly directing fire and repositioning platoons, as if this were a training exercise back in the Louisiana maneuvers. His tankers had drilled this exact style of fighting for months. Use terrain, use speed, use radio, never slug it out. The Hellcat crews operated with even greater autonomy. A platoon leader would spot a German concentration, call for a quick tot shoot to stun it, then swarm in while the enemy was still reeling. Artillery forward observers rode in the open-topped M18s, directing fire from the moving vehicles themselves. The coordination was seamless, almost effortless. By the end of the second day, another 20 Panthers were gone. Some brewed up spectacularly after multiple penetrations cooked off ammunition. Others sat crippled, tracks blown, engines dead, waiting for nightfall so crews could slip away. A few were captured intact when their crews abandoned them after running out of fuel during a failed flanking attempt. American ordnance teams swarmed over these prizes under guard, measuring armor thickness, photographing optics, preparing them to be shipped back to Aberdeen Proving Ground for testing. The intelligence windfall was almost as valuable as the tactical victory. Manteuffel attempted one final gambit. On September 21st, he pulled together every remaining operational Panther, barely 30 by now, and ordered a night attack supported by whatever Panther grenadiers could still walk. The plan was to infiltrate under cover of darkness, bypass the forward American screen, and strike deep at suspected supply dumps. For a few hours, it seemed to work. German tanks slipped through gaps, engines throttled low, moving on roads the Americans had not yet fully secured. But the U.S. 4th Armored Division had learned caution after months of hard fighting. Outposts were alert, trip flares popped, illumination rounds burst overhead, and once again, the artillery spoke. Time on target at night was even more terrifying. Star shells hung in the sky like artificial moons, bathing the landscape in harsh white light. Then the high explosive arrived all at once. German infantry scattered, tanks milled in confusion, trying to find cover that did not exist on open farmland. Hellcats, equipped with early infrared driving lights, prowled the edges of the illuminated zones, picking off Panthers that silhouetted themselves against the flares. By dawn, the night attack had collapsed. More burning wrecks dotted the fields. Crews surrendered in small groups when they realized escape was impossible. The third day became a mop-up. American combat commands advanced cautiously, leapfrogging from village to village, calling in artillery on any reported German concentration. Recovery vehicles worked around the clock, towing away damaged U.S. vehicles while bulldozers pushed abandoned Panthers off roads. German resistance fragmented into isolated pockets. Some crews fought to the last round. Others blew up their tanks and tried to infiltrate west toward German lines on foot. Few made it. Manteuffel's staff compiled the damage reports by September 22nd. The numbers were a gut punch. Of the 58 Panthers committed, only 8 remained combat-ready. The rest were smoking hulks, abandoned shells, or captured trophies. Human losses were equally grim. Hundreds of elite tankers and grenadiers dead or wounded. Their expertise irreplaceable in a Reich scraping the bottom of its manpower barrel. The counterattack hadn't just failed, it had backfired. Patton's Third Army, far from reeling, used the breathing space to consolidate and push forward. The German 5th Panzer Army, of which Manteuffel's corps was part, lost its best chance to blunt the Allied advance before winter set in. In the American camps, the mood swung from tense vigilance to quiet triumph. Abrams' 37th Tank Battalion tallied their kills with a mix of awe and pragmatism. One Hellcat crew claimed 3 Panthers in a single ambush, their 76mm gun barking from a concealed position before they vanished like ghosts. Mechanics worked miracles in mobile depots, swapping out damaged components from stockpiles that seemed bottomless. A Sherman that took a glancing hit to its turret ring was back in action by the next morning, its crew joking about Yankee duct tape and elbow grease. The Red Ball Express kept the fuel flowing, trucks rumbling day and night, despite Luftwaffe harassment and muddy roads. The disparity in industrial might was laid bare. Back in Germany, Panther production lines in factories like MAN and Daimler-Benz churned out tanks at a frantic pace, but each one required hundreds of man-ores, rare alloys, and precision engineering that strained a war economy under constant bombing. Fuel synthesis plants struggled to produce enough ersatz gasoline from coal, rationed drop by drop. In contrast, Detroit's arsenal of democracy stamped out Shermans like Model Ts over 50,000 produced by war's end. Hellcats rolled off lines at Buick and Fisher Body, simple designs that prioritized quantity and maintainability over individual perfection. Manteuffel reflected on this in his post-war writings. He praised the Panther's design, but lamented the systemic failures. No standardized spares, overcomplicated transmissions prone to breakdown under stress, and a fuel hunger that no logistics train could satisfy in retreat. He admitted the American shoot and scoot tactics, combined with overwhelming artillery support, made traditional panzer keel formations obsolete. The battle wasn't won by superior soldiers both sides, fought with valor, but by a machine of war that replaced losses faster than they occurred. One poignant anecdote from Arracourt underscores the human element. A young German lieutenant, commanding a Panther platoon, radioed back during the height of the fog-bound chaos. Americans everywhere, tanks, appearing and disappearing like phantoms, cannot hold. His transmission cut off mid-sentence as a Hellcat round found its mark. On the American side, a sergeant in a bazooka team recalled creeping up on a stalled Panther, its crew bailing out under artillery fire. They were good fighters, he later said, but we had the whole damn country behind us, factories, farms, folks back home. They had Hitler. As the fighting tapered, intelligence officers interrogated captured Germans. Many were stunned by the American recovery speed. One Panzer ace, with kills from Kursk on his record, shook his head. We build a tank to last forever. You build one to win today, and replace it tomorrow. This mindset shift was the real revolution of Arracourt, not just a tactical defeat, but a preview of the industrial avalanche that would bury the Third Reich. Patton himself, ever the showman, visited the front lines shortly after. Striding among the captured Panthers, he quipped to reporters, "These cats got declawed by our ally fighters." His Third Army pressed on. The delay at Arracourt, a mere hiccup in the race to the Rhine. For Manteuffel, the battle was a bitter lesson. He would apply some of its insights in the Ardennes offensive months later, but even there, the same systemic flaws doomed the last German gasp. Arracourt's legacy rippled through the Wehrmacht's high command. Hitler, ensconced in his wolf's lair, received sanitized reports of the debacle losses attributed to overwhelming American air superiority, or treacherous terrain. But field commanders like Manteuffel knew the truth. It was a failure of adaptation. The Panther, for all its engineering brilliance, was a relic of an earlier war philosophy, one where quality trumped quantity, where a single superior machine could dominate. But in the fluid high-tempo warfare of 1944, quantity had a quality all its own. The Americans could afford to lose 3 Shermans for every Panther they killed, because 5 more Shermans would arrive by rail the next week. Contrast this with German production woes. Allied bombers hammered factories day and night. Skilled workers were conscripted into infantry roles. Raw materials dwindled under blockade. Each Panther required 150,000 man-hours to build 6 times that of a Sherman, and once built, getting it to the front meant navigating bombed-out rail lines, partisan ambushes, and chronic fuel shortages. The 113th Brigade's Panthers had arrived pristine, but that was a miracle in itself. Most new tanks spent weeks in transit depots, cannibalized for parts to keep older ones running. On the American side, the industrial behemoth hummed unchecked. Factories in Detroit, Cleveland, and beyond operated 3 shifts, churning out tanks, trucks, artillery pieces, and the endless ammunition they consumed. The Lend-Lease program funneled resources from a continent untouched by war. Oil from Texas fields flowed freely. Engineers iterated designs on the fly, upgunning Shermans with 76mm cannons, adding wet ammo storage to reduce brew-ups. Logistics officers treated vehicles as disposable tools, not irreplaceable assets. Manteuffels' men paid the price for this asymmetry. Survivors of Arracourt were folded into other depleted units, their experiences dismissed as anomalies, but the battle foreshadowed the Ardennes. There, 2 Panthers and Tigers would shine in initial breakthroughs, only to falter on fuel and maintenance. King Tigers bogged down in mud, abandoned when recovery proved impossible. The pattern was set. Technological peaks undermined by systemic valleys. Yet, credit where due, the German crews fought with grim determination. One Panther held off a platoon of Shermans for hours, its gun claiming multiple kills before a flanking Hellcat ended it. Stories like these fueled post-war myths of Wehrmacht invincibility. ignoring the broader collapse. American accounts, meanwhile, highlighted teamwork. Abrams coordinating with artillery, Hellcat drivers pushing their machines to the limit, mechanics turning wrecks into warriors overnight. If Arracourt taught one lesson, it's that wars are won in warehouses as much as on front lines. Patton understood this instinctively. His famous prayer for clear weather during the Bulge was as much about enabling supply drops as air support. Manteuffel, for all his tactical acumen, operated within a regime that prioritized wonder weapons over mundane necessities like truck fleets and fuel depots. Today, military historians pore over Arracourt's after-action reports, modeling simulations to test what-if scenarios. What if the fog hadn't descended? What if German fuel had held? What if Manteuffel had more infantry support? Invariably, the models show American advantages compounding, better radios for coordination, flexible doctrine allowing initiative at lower levels, and that inexhaustible supply tail wagging the dog of combat. In Memoirs, Manteuffel wrote candidly, "The American artillery was not just accurate, it was instantaneous. Their tank destroyers were not armored, they were ethereal." He survived captivity, consulted for NATO in the Cold War, applying hard-won insights against potential Soviet armored hordes. Abrams rose to command in Vietnam, his namesake tank embodying the evolution. Heavy armor married to mobility and logistics. The wrecks of Arracourt faded into Lorraine's soil, plowed under by farmers reclaiming fields. Today, memorials dot the area, simple plaques marking where steel giants fell. Tourists trace the battle on apps, virtual Panthers rumbling across augmented reality landscapes. But the real monument is the enduring truth. In modern war, the best tank is the one that shows up, fueled, crewed, and supported. For those studying military strategy today, Arracourt offers timeless lessons in an era of drones and cyber warfare. The fundamentals remain. Adaptability beats rigidity. Logistics trump tactics. And information dominance, whether from Piper Cubs or satellites, decides outcomes. Manteuffels' Panthers were outclassed, not by better tanks, but by a better ecosystem. The U.S. Army's combined arms approach, integrating armor, infantry, artillery, and reconnaissance seamlessly, turned a potential German victory into a rout. It's a case study in how environmental factors like weather can flip technological advantages on their head. Imagine the scene from a Panther gunner's perspective, peering through Superior's ice optics into a wall of fog, hearing the alien shriek of Hellcat engines circling like sharks. The frustration must have been palpable, knowing your machine could dominate in clear conditions, yet reduced to reactive firing at ghosts. German after-action reviews, scant as they were amid the chaos, noted the breakdown in radio discipline as a key failure. Commands overlapped, positions misreported, leading to friendly fire incidents that further eroded morale. American innovation shown in small details too. The M18's open turret, derided by Germans as vulnerable, actually aided situational awareness. Crews could hear approaching threats better, spot targets quicker, without relying solely on periscopes. Their radios, powered by reliable batteries and backed by a network of repeaters, maintained clarity even under stress. In contrast, German sets often jammed or failed due to shrapnel damage, isolating units in critical moments. Patton's role, while not hands-on, at Arracourt, loomed large. His aggressive style had stretched the Third Army thin, inviting the counterattack, but his emphasis on mobility and initiative empowered subordinates like Abrams and Clark to respond dynamically. Patton's famous maxim, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week," was embodied here. The Germans planned perfectly but executed in a vacuum. Americans improvised violently and won. Casualty figures underscore the asymmetry. German losses: over 200 killed, 500 wounded, plus the irreplaceable hardware. American: around 100 casualties total, with vehicle losses quickly offset. This efficiency stemmed from doctrine. US units rotated fatigued crews, maintained high readiness through rotations, while Germans pushed exhausted men to breaking points. Post-battle, the area around Arracourt, villages like Moyenvik, Richecourt La Petite bore scars for years. Farmers unearthed unexploded ordnance, twisted metal hulks became playgrounds for children. Veterans on both sides revisited in later decades, sharing stories at reunions. One American tanker recalled shaking hands with a former Panther commander in the 1980s, both marveling at how close the fight had been despite the lopsided score. Arracourt influenced tank design evolution. Post-war, the U.S. developed the M46 Patton, blending mobility with firepower. Soviets, observing via intelligence, emphasized mass production in T-55s. German successors in the Bundeswehr adopted NATO standards, prioritizing interoperability over standalone superiority. The battle debunked the wonder weapon myth. Panthers, Tigers. Even V2 South couldn't save a failing system. In popular culture, Arracourt fades behind flashier engagements, but it appears in wargames like Panzer Leader, or simulations in combat mission. Authors like Zaloga detail it in books on armored warfare, highlighting how it accelerated the Allied push into Germany proper. Without this check, Patton might have faced stiffer resistance later. Manteuffels' career continued. He led in the Bulge, surrendering in 1945. Imprisoned briefly, he later advised on German rearmament. His reflections on Arracourt emphasized the need for balanced forces. Armor without support is futile. Abrams, promoted rapidly, became Army Chief of Staff, his legacy armored in the M1 tank. As we close this tale, remember, wars pivot on unseen threads, supply chains, weather whims, doctrinal flexibility. The 58 Panthers sent to stop Patton embodied German engineering pinnacle, yet fewer than 10 limped back, victims of a superior war machine. Fog, fire, and factories sealed their fate. Thanks for joining this deep dive into the Battle of Arracourt, where 58 brand new Panthers met their match against American ingenuity and industrial power. If the clash of steel titans and the fog-shrouded traps gripped you, hit that like button. It fuels the algorithm to bring more forgotten W2 epics your way. Subscribe and ring the bell for notifications on our next video. Perhaps the untold story of how Soviet T-34s turned the tide at Kursk, or the daring glider assaults of Operation Market Garden. Your subscriptions keep these narratives alive. Drop a comment below. If you were Manteuffel, what one change would you make to salvage the counterattack? Fog or no fog, Panther or Hellcat, which would you command and why? Where are you watching from? Germany, the US, or the fields of Lorraine itself? Share your thoughts. Your engagement sparks discussions that enrich everyone's understanding of history's pivotal moments. We at Tales of Valor believe history isn't just dates and battles. It's the human calculus of decisions under fire, the machinery of empires clashing, and the lessons that echo through time. From German generals grappling with obsolescence to American commanders wielding systems like weapons, these stories reveal why wars are won in boardrooms and factories as much as foxholes. If you crave more, check our playlist on armored warfare, from the Blitzkrieg's thunder to the Cold War standoffs. And for exclusive behind the scenes, join our Patreon, early access, bonus content, and Q&A sessions where we dissect viewer-suggested battles. Remember, the 58 Panthers deployed to halt Patton weren't defeated by chance. It was the perfect storm of environmental equalizer, doctrinal mismatch, and logistical supremacy that left fewer than 10 operational. Fog blinded the beasts, Hellcats stung like wasps, artillery rained precision hell, and America's endless supply chain replenished what Germany could only dream of replacing. This wasn't just a battle, it was the death knell for the Panzer myth. As we sign off, ponder this. In today's world of drones and cyber strikes, Arracourt's echoes remind us that technology alone doesn't win wars, it's the system sustaining it. Thanks for watching. Keep history burning bright. We'll see you in the next untold tale. If Arracourt captivates you, dive deeper with recommended reads. Steven Zalaga's Armored Thunderbolt dissects the Sherman vs. Panther myth, while Patton, A Genius for War by Carlo D'Este, illuminates the man's relentless drive. Online, forums like Axis History or Reddit's Our World War II buzz with debates on whether better German logistics could have flipped the script. Documentaries on the History Channel occasionally spotlighted, framing it as the forgotten tank battle that hastened VE Day. Visualize the chaos. Panthers hulking in fog, their 45-ton frames grinding forward, only to erupt in orange blooms as 76mm rounds pierce sides. Hellcats lithe at 17 tons, dart like shadows, engines purring then roaring away. Artillery shells whistle in unison, earth heaving in synchronized fury. It's cinematic worthy of a Hollywood epic, though it remains niche, overshadowed by Band of Brothers glamour. For modelers and gamers, Arracourt is gold. Scale kits of Panthers from Tamiya capture the sloped menace. Hellcats from Academy evoke their speed. In games like World of Tanks, players recreate the swarms, debating balance. War Thunder simulations let you feel the fog's frustration, turret traversing futilely as icons pop on minimaps. Manteuffels' post-war life offers irony, advising the West against Soviet armor. His Arracourt scars informed doctrines that valued mobility over mass. Abrams' ascent mirrored America's pivot to combined arms, his tank becoming a Cold War icon. The battle's DNA lives in modern MBT's reactive armor. Networked comms. Drone scouts all evolutions from 1944's hard lessons. As global conflicts evolve, Arracourt warns against over-reliance on tech wonders. Think hypersonic missiles versus drone swarms, or cyber fortresses cracked by simple logistics hacks. History cycles. Superior systems endure. Germany's Panthers were apex, yet prey to a web of factors: weather, supply, adaptation. Wrapping up, the 58 Panthers deployed against Patton embodied hubris. Fresh steel against a tidal wave of production. Fewer than 10 returned, a testament to why the Allies prevailed. Not just guns and guts, but gears of industry grinding inexorably. Thanks again for watching. Your views preserve these sagas. One last call: share this video with history buffs in your circle. Let's grow the community exploring W2's hidden gems. Until next time, keep questioning the narratives, honoring the fallen, and learning from the past. Peace.